So, good morning. Second year Bcom Computer Applications Semester 4. Second year Bcom Computer Applications Semester 4. Web Technologies Unit 4. So, Unit 4 syllabus is Events and Event Handlers. So, what is the syllabus of Unit 4? Events and Event Handlers. So, this is a single setup question. So, in this unit we may discuss about what are events, what are event handlers, and what are the different types of events. What are the different types of events? We know that events are basically 4 to 5 types: keyboard event, mouse event, keyboard events, mouse events, keyboard event and mouse event, and farm event, Windows event, keyboard event, mouse event, farm event, and Windows event, like that. So we will discuss about general information about events. Event, what is an event, what is event handler, how to raise or how to use events, what are the different types of events, on, abort, on, click, and on, double click, on, drag drop, on, error, on, focus, on, key press, on, key up, on, load, on, mouse down, on, mouse move, on, mouse out, on, mouse over, on, move, on, rest, on, resize, on, select, on, submit, on, unload. All these are the different commands or functions used in events and event handling. So basically events are 4 types. We know that keyboard events and mouse events, farm events, and Windows events. So keyboard event, what is an event? Actually, what is the definition of event? Means events are generally raised. Events are generally raised whenever a particular action is to be taken. So if you press, for example, simple example is pressing Control P. If you press Control P, print dialog box will be appeared. Like that, we may create our own events, and every event have its own code or program, and it's have some shortcut key also by using various keys, and it's have some code or program code or function, and generally events are generally used to complete some task. So all these are the different events. So what are keyboard events? Keyboard events are generally used. What are keyboard events? Keyboard events are generally used to to do a task or a particular task or command by pressing a particular key on the by pressing or by using some keyboard keys. Second one is mouse events. What are mouse events? Mouse events are generally used whenever you use mouse buttons, that is left button, right button, scroll button, click, double click, like that, select, like that. Farm events means generally these are raised or called whenever you fill when you fill the contents or data or information on the form, or whenever you change the contents from, for example, changing or editing some text boxes, or selecting, or whenever you submit some form by pressing form submit button, reset button, like that. So next one is Windows event. Windows events, as we know, that maximize window, minimizing windows, like that. So we start with some PPTs. Here it is a Windows. This is another PPT. So what are the objectives? What are the objectives of this PPT? Means we are discussing about events, and what are the various HTML tags and events, how to use event handlers. Means every event have its own event handlers, and about links and how to use link events, how to create image maps, like that. So what are events and how to use and how to call them? So generally events means a specific circumstance monitored by JavaScript and that your script can respond to in some way, or a trigger that fires specific JavaScript code in response to a given situation. So generally events are raised or triggered. Generally events are raised or triggered that fires specific JavaScript code in response to a given situation. For example, an action that a user takes place. An action that a user takes place. So events, basically events are two types. First one is user generated events and system generated events. User generated events means our own events. User generated events means our own created or our own used events. Example, mouse clicks, like that means whenever you press a mouse click, whenever you press a click on a mouse, some particular action is to be taken place. Similarly, system generated events. System generated events are ready to use events or ready made events. System generated events are generally ready made or ready to use events. Example, loading when loading a window or event triggered by a web browser, like that. So all these are the different types of events. All these are the different types of events and their meaning. For example, about is a event, means when this event is used means the loading of an image is interrupted. Blur means an element such as a radio button becomes inactive. Click means the user clicks an element once. Change means the value of an element such as text box changes. Error, an error occurs. Error means an error occurs when a document or image is being loaded. Focus means an element such as a command button becomes active, means focus means whenever a control, a form control or an element got focused, it is generally by using some focus event. Load event means a document or image loads. To load a document or image, we may use generally load event. Mouse out means the mouse moves off an element. In that case we use mouse out. Mouse over means the mouse moves over an element. Reset means a form's fields are reset to its default values, means while entering or while filling the data entry screen or a form, and if you want to, suppose you want to clear all the fields entered, then you may simply use reset event. Reset button means when you press any reset button, all the data or information is generally erased, is automatically erased. That situations are called as reset events. Select event. What is select event? Select means a user selects a field in a form. Suppose in a data entry screen or a form, whenever a user selects a field, means a field means like text box, checkbox, radio button. Whenever a user selects a particular button, generally select event is used. And submit button means a user submits a form, means after filling a form, generally we submit the form or simply press the save button or submit button. In that cases, generally the data is saved, or the data is automatically sent back, or the data is automatically sent to the servers, database servers, web servers, like that. So in that situations we may use submit event, means when you press the submit button, the data are the information you entered on a form is generally sent to database servers or web servers. In that situation, we may use submit event. Next is unload event, load and unload. So load means load event is when we use load event. Load event means whenever we want to load a window or load a document, document uploads, or whenever you want to upload something, some image, picture, graphics. In that case, we may use load event. Unload means whenever it is used whenever it is interrupted by something else. So elements and events. So events, generally events available to an element. What are elements means HTML elements. First are elements. Elements means different parts or components. What are elements? Elements are nothing but they are generally different parts or different components, and so events available to an element. So what are events and what are events and what are elements? So events available to element are generally click event available for. So there are various levels of events, various types of events are available to each and every element. So event handlers. So what are event handlers? Generally event handlers code, it is a code, it is a small program or code that executes in response to a specific event. So code is included as an attribute of the element that initiates the event. Syntax of an event handler within an element is, so what is the syntax of JavaScript is element handler is equals to with quotes JavaScript code. So event handler names are case sensitive, generally they are in lowercase letters, must be written using all lowercase letters in order to for a document to be well formed. However, most JavaScript interpreters will ignore capitalization. So what are event handlers? Event handlers are generally a code or a small program or a code or statements. So event handlers a code that executes in response to a specific event. Code is included as an attribute of the element that initiates the event. Syntax of an event handler within an element is, so syntax of the event handler within an element is element space event handler is equals to with course JavaScript code. So element space event handler, element space So what is event handler? Event handler is nothing but it is some code, some program to be used with every event whenever it is raised. So whenever a particular event is raised, that particular code, that particular small code is automatically raised and executed. It automatically raised and executed. So that is a code executes in response to a specific event, and code is included as an attribute of element. And generally, what is the syntax of an event? Element. Here, what is an element? Element means some HTML element. Event handler is equals to within quotes some JavaScript code. Generally, the code or the program for all the events are written in JavaScript. Event handler names are case sensitive. Event handler names are case sensitive. So generally they can be written in small letters and must be written using all lowercase letters in order for a document to be well formed. So event handler. So event handler naming conversion. Generally all event handlers are starts or begins with a prefix word called on. So what is the syntax? All the event handlers are generally starts or begins with the word on. So example, on click. Example is on C capital CLICK, on click. So event handler naming conversion. So event name with a prefix of on. Example is on click, on DBL click, like that. So example is input type is equals to button, input type is equals to within quotes button, on click is equals to input type is equals to within quotes button, on click is equals to within quotes alert message. So all events and event handlers are generally starts with a keyword and start with on. So example is on click, on double click, on blur, on mouse move on key press, on key down, on key up. All these are different examples. All these are different examples of events or event handling. So simple example is input type is equals to within quotes button, means it is used for a submit button. Space on click means on click, that is the code. On click is equals to within quotes some code or some function, some JavaScript code or some JavaScript function, like that. So here we may use the syntax like this: input type is equals to button, on click is equals to within quotes alert within brackets single quote. So whenever on the form, when you press after filling the data information, when you click submit button, when you click on a submit button, that particular code or that particular alert message will be displayed. So event handlers. So there are many elements. We may use event handling programming, or we may use event handlers for almost all the HTML elements used. So there are different events and event handlers are used for all the elements like images, anchors or links, forms, input button, text area controls, and form controls, so like some text box control, text area control, radio button control. So there are separate event handlers or event handling codes are used for separate elements. So syntax is different. So here the first we start with anchor tag. So what are the different events? What is anchor tag? Element means HTML tag. Here element is HTML tag used. Description means the description about the tag. So A means anchor tag. Anchor tag generally or a link. Anchor tag or a link. So what are the different types of events used in anchor tag? On focus, on blur, on click, on DBL click, on mouse down, on mouse up, on mouse over, on mouse move, on mouse out, on key press, on key down, on key up, like that. So image, next element is image. So image tag, what is the image tag? Image tag is generally used, image tag is generally used to load an image in a HTML page. So what are the different types of events? What are the different events used with the images? So on click means when you click on an image. On DBL click means when you double click on an image. On mouse down means whenever you press and release a mouse button on a image. On mouse up, on mouse over means when you move on the objects. On mouse over is generally used to move on the object, and on mouse move and on mouse out. On key press, on key press means this is a keyboard event. So this is a keyboard event. On key press, so when you press a particular key, when you press a key on a keyboard. So on key down means when you press and hold down, when you press and hold down the particular key on a keyboard. On key up and means when you press and release, when you press and release a particular key on a keyboard. Next is body tag. What is the next body tag? Element is body tag. So document body tag. Next is document body. So what are the different events used in body tag? On load, on load, on unload, on click, on DBL click, on mouse down, on mouse up, on mouse over, on mouse move, on mouse out, on key press, on key down, on key up. Next, form element. So what are the form elements? So generally form elements are used to describe about forms. Generally form elements are generally used to describe about various form elements. So on submit, on submit, on reset, on click, on DBL click. On click means single click, on DBL click means all these are form elements, means generally they are used with forms and form controls. So there are many types of form controls are available, like text box control, submit button control, radio button, list box control, like that. So what are the different events used on form elements? On submit, on reset, on click, on DBL click, on mouse down, on mouse up, on mouse over, on mouse move, on mouse out, on key press, on key down, on key up, like that. Input element. Next type of element is input element. So this is also form control element. This is also form control element. Input box or input tag. So what are the different events used with input tags or form controls? Tab index, access key, on focus, on blur, on select, on change, on click, on DBL click, like that. So all these are on DBL click,